There are many creatures in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition that come with a wide variety of features, appearances, lore, and flavor. They can be used to breathe life into your campaign by adding conflict and combat that's appropriate to your setting. And with so many creatures across all the different books that have come out over the years, there are usually enough monsters for every occasion. So in this video, we'll be going over some of the best winter-themed monsters you might throw at your players during the holiday season. Starting this list off with a frosty stomp is the Frost Giant, and some of its brethren from various sources, including the Frost Giant Everlasting One from Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse, and Frost Giant Ice Shaper from Bigsby's Present Glory of the Giants. The Frost Giant's first appearance in the Monster Manual is a huge-sized creature that has a challenge rating of 8, and doesn't really come with anything too overbearing. It can make 2 attacks with its Great Axe via its multi-attack action, each dealing 3d12 plus 6 slashing damage on hit with a reach of 10 feet, and can throw a rock as a ranged option, dealing 4d10 plus 6 bludgeoning damage on hit. If you're looking for a stronger challenge for your players, however, some of the aforementioned variants might be more to your liking. The Frost Giant Everlasting One is a CR 12 variant, which comes with a 25% chance of having an extra head, which can grant them advantage on perception checks and saving throws against being blinded, charmed, deafened, frightened, stunned, or knocked unconscious. This variant of the Frost Giant also comes with a small amount of health regeneration, regaining 10 hit points at the start of each of its turns unless it takes fire damage, in which case the regen won't proc at the start of its next turn. Additionally, you have to make sure the Giant doesn't have its regeneration ability turned on when it reaches 0 hit points, or else it'll just regain 10 hit points and become conscious again. Along with the same attack options to the normal Frost Giant, the Everlasting ones also come with a bonus attack called Vapric's Rage, that they can use once per short or long rest, which works the exact same as a Barbarian's Rage, granting them advantage on strength checks and saving throws, gaining a +4 bonus to damage rolls made with melee weapon attacks, and resistance to all bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. And if you're looking for a more boss-like variant of the Frost Giant to end your holiday session with a bang, we have the Frost Giant Ice Shaper, which is a whopping CR 17 creature with a few key differences in comparison to its younger brethren. Along with 3 legendary resistances to instantly turn a failed save into a successful one, the Ice Shaper variant also comes with an object in its possession that has a frost rune inscribed onto it. While holding on or wearing the object bearing the rune, the giant gets 2 abilities to play with: Ice Wolves and Ice Armor, which we'll cover in a moment. The object bearing the rune has an AC of 16 and 40 hit points with immunity to necrotic, poison, and psychic damage, and regains all of its hit points at the end of every turn, but turns to dust if its hit points are reduced to 0 or if the giant dies. If the giant survives the encounter and its rune is destroyed, however, it can then inscribe a new one after finishing a short or long rest. As for its actions, it retains its Great Axe, but loses its Rock Throw ability, opting for a Freezing Ray attack with a range of 120 feet, and is a ranged spell attack that deals 3d8 plus 4 cold damage. Additionally, the ray forces the affected target to make a DC 18 Constitution saving throw or become restrained until the end of its turn. However, a creature still gets their speed reduced by 10 feet until the end of its next turn if they happen to succeed their save against the restrained effect, marking one of the few instances in the game where an effect activates even on a successful save. The best part of all this is the fact that its multi-attack can not only allow the giant to make 3 attacks, but also make any combination of attacks between its Great Axe or Freezing Ray as it sees fit. As for its 2 unique abilities, Ice Wolves allows the Frost Giant Ice Shaper to summon 1d4 wolves made of pure ice and in an occupied space within 30 feet of itself, which all count as winter wolves for the purposes of stats and abilities, but are considered elementals instead of monstrosities, that last for 1 minute until the Ice Giant dies or until the giant uses the action again. They function pretty much the same as their Winter Wolf counterparts, but have a +6 bonus to their attack and damage rolls while within 30 feet of the giant. Meanwhile, Ice Armor is a reaction that the giant can make in response to an attack roll being made against it in order to form a coat of ice around itself, granting a +6 bonus AC against the attack. Whether or not the attack hits or misses, the ice then shatters, damaging each creature within 5 feet of itself for 3d8 cold damage unless affected creatures make a DC 18 Dexterity saving throw to avoid all the damage. And while there are a few other variants of the Frost Giant, such as the Frost Giant of Evil Water and the Frost Giant Skeleton, the 3 mentioned here are the ones that fit the winter aesthetic of the holiday the most and can be used to create a Frost Giant exclusive session for the winter holidays if you really wanted. As for why the Frost Giant takes number 10 on this list, it's mostly because they are as generic as they come, and the only way you can really make them work is by using multiple variants of the Frost Giant in the first place, since normal frost giants don't really have anything going for them except their name. However, having 1 or 2 thrown into your winter holiday extravaganza might still work for what you're trying to achieve, so it takes a spot on this list regardless. And sending chills to everyone in the room at the number 9 spot on this list is the Coldlight Walker from Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden. This is a CR5 undead and is the embodiment of winter's wrath created by gods that personify winter. They are hateful spirits that were denied passage to the afterlife and are preserved in such forms as a message to the living about how fragile life can be. As for what they can do, along with not needing air, food, drink, or sleep, the Coldlight Walker sheds bright light in a 20-foot radius and dim light for an additional 20 feet. As a bonus action, the Walker can target one creature inside its bright light and attempt to blind it with a blinding light if that creature fails the DC 14 Constitution saving throw until the start of the Walker's next turn. The Walker can make 2 attacks with its multi-attacks. Its slam attack deals 2d8 plus 2 bludgeoning damage and an additional 4d6 cold damage, while Cold Ray is a 60 feet range spell which can do 4d10 plus 3 cold damage. But what makes the Coldlight Walker especially deadly is its ability, Icy Doom, which freezes creatures it kills for 9 days, during which time it can't be thawed, harmed by fire, animated, or raised from the dead. While this creature does embody the spirit of winter very well, what makes the Coldlight Walker take the number 9 on this list is its Icy Doom ability. Usually, holiday sessions are meant to be lighthearted and less risky than a normal session, since they're usually games you want your players to have a good time in and relax. So, while the Coldlight Walker isn't the deadliest creature to encounter, being a CR5 creature with some pretty hard-hitting attacks, having a player be permanently killed for 9 days, isn't a very fun mechanic to play with for the holidays, especially if it's meant to be a lighthearted session or even a small filler arc. However, because of its lore as being a spirit of winter created by the winter gods, the Coldlight Walker still takes a spot on this list, just not any higher than the number of days it can freeze you. And turning into a weapon of righteousness at the number 8 spot on this list is the Frostmourn from Bixby Presents Glory of the Giants. Frostmourns are undead frost giants that have been killed in a dishonorable way and have risen with a hungering drive for vengeance, preying upon those that killed them so dishonorably, but can sometimes go far beyond that. Similar to restless spirits, they might attack the living and innocent so long as they're searching for the ones that murdered them. However, their hatred can sometimes go beyond their desire for revenge, even years after their murderers are slain. Even though they may look similar to our aforementioned frost giants, the Frostmourn is different enough that it deserves its own spot on this list. Even the actions that the Frostmourn can take are different. Its multi-attack can consist of 1 freezing touch attack and 1 icy axe attack, or it can replace 1 or both attacks with a polar ray attack. As for what each attack does, freezing touch is a melee weapon attack with a range of 5 feet that deals 48 cold damage and 48 necrotic damage on hit. However, if this attack drops a creature's hit points to 0, the target drops to 1 hit point instead and becomes petrified as a frozen statue. While frozen, the creature instantly shatters and dies if it takes any bludgeoning damage at all. On the flip side, if the frozen creature is hit with something that deals fire damage, it instead takes no damage and thaws the creature, ending the petrification. Meanwhile, Icy Axe is a metal weapon attack with a reach of 10 feet that deals 3d8 plus 6 slashing damage, which is slightly lower than a normal frost giant's great axe, but it deals an additional 2d6 cold damage that makes up for it. Polar Ray is a 120-foot range spell attack that deals 5d10 plus 4 cold damage to one creature, and reduces their speed by 10 feet until the end of its next turn, allowing the Frostmourn to attack from as far as your party struggles to close the gap between you and it. The Frostmourn also comes with a reaction that it can use immediately after a creature hits with an attack roll, reducing the damage it takes by half, and teleports away as the Frostmourn dissolves into a temporary blizzard, and reappearing in an occupied space it can see within 30 feet of itself, basically acting as a reactionary Misty Step, or the Blessing of the Raven Queen racial feature that Shadar Kai get if you want to be more mechanically accurate, since it does the same thing but as a bonus action. Functionally, you could run the Frostmourn as just another frost giant adjacent creature to throw at your party during a winter holiday session. But what makes the Frostmourn take the higher spot on this list is due to the fact that it's much easier to flavor a vengeful spirit as wanting revenge for a reason other than murder. Or perhaps the frost giant was murdered by a creature made by a winter god. After all, stories about spirits in general tend to fall under the winter holiday or spooky month as cautionary tales. And given their stat block, the Frostmourn possesses a lot of unique abilities to play with. Perhaps the Frostmourn freezes an important NPC and keeps it protected from any sources of fire damage until the party does what it wants, like give its murderer a dishonorable death in a similar manner done to it, only to betray the party due to not being satisfied. So then you have to save the NPC yourself by defeating the Frostmourn at the end of the session. Essentially, whether you use the Frostmourn as a frost giant adjacent enemy or its own mini-boss type creature, there is enough versatility and flexibility in the creature's stat block that makes it stand out more than other frost giants, so it takes number 8 on this list. And breaking the ice at the number 7 spot on this list are the Cradle of the Frost Scion and the Scion of Thrym, both from Big C's Present Glory of the Giants. Unlike other ties on this list, these two creatures coincide with one another due to being part of the same encounter, with the Cradle of the Frost Scion being the first phase of the encounter and Scion of Thrym being the second phase. The Cradle of the Frost Scion is a CR24 gargantuan creature that acts as a container for the Scion of Thrym. While stationary at first, if it's ever disturbed, the Cradle animates and becomes a bipedal figure formed of ice and snow and tries its best to destroy its intruders, which is where the encounter would begin. It comes with a whopping 5 legendary resistances, including magical resistance to gain advantage on all saving throws against spells and other magical effects, and is considered a siege monster, dealing double damage against objects and structures. It comes with a multi-attack options, which consist of 2 slam or hurl icicle attacks, and slam dealing 4d10 plus 8 bludgeoning damage plus 2d10 cold damage, while hurl icicle deals 4d8 plus 8 piercing damage plus 2d8 cold damage and makes the target fall prone if they fail a DC 23 strength saving throw. The Cradle also comes with a freezing breath that recharges on a 5 or 6 on a d6 roll at the start of each of its turns whenever it uses it. The Cradle exhales a 90-foot cone of frost that deals 8d12 cold damage to each creature that fails a DC 23 Constitution save and has its speed reduced to 0 until the end of its next turn. Have as much damage and no movement impairing effects on a successful save. Just like Frostmourn, a creature whose hit points drop to 0 by the breath instead drop to 1 hit point and become a frozen statue with the same end and death conditions as previously mentioned. The Cradle also has a bonus action called Chilling Mist, which allows it to conjure a cloud of chilly mist that fills a 30-foot radius sphere centered on a point it can see within 90 feet of itself, dealing 8d6 cold damage and preventing reactions of all affected creatures that fail a DC 19 Constitution save to avoid both effects until the start of its next turn. The mist then vanishes at the end of the Cradle's turn. There are also a few regional effects that are in place so long as the Scion of Thrym itself is alive, which includes creating or enhancing the extreme cold land within 6 miles of the Scion, with the numbing cold that enhances an already extremely cold environment, invoking disadvantage on strength and dexterity checks on creatures not resistant or immune to cold damage. Also empowering all frost giants within 1,000 feet of the Scion by granting them a +7 bonus to attack and damage rolls, and allows for all beasts within 6 miles of the Scion to reproduce rapidly and thrive. Speaking of the Scion of Thrym, once the Cradle reaches 0 hit points, the Scion immediately emerges and attempts to wreak havoc on the party. It comes with the same trait as Cradle, except it comes with 6 legendary resistances instead of 5, which technically means it has 11 legendary resistances if you manage to deplete the previous 5 it has as a Cradle. Its multi-attack consists of making 1 ice attack and 2 slam attacks, or it can make 2 glacier throw attacks. And instead of freezing breath as its rechargeable ability, the Scion of Thrym has glacial upheaval, which also recharges on a 5 or 6. The Scion conjures a mass of ice into the air at a point it can see within 30 feet of itself, forcing all creatures other than the Scion in a 30-foot radius, 100-foot high cylinder, which must succeed a DC 25 dexterity saving throw, or take 8d8 bludgeoning damage plus 3d12 cold damage before being launched vertically to the top of the cylinder before falling, taking additional fall damage. Creatures that save only take half the damage and are instead pushed to the nearest unoccupied space outside the cylinder with no additional effects. If that weren't enough, however, at the start of the Scion's next turn, a mass of ice plummets into the ground at a point the Scion can see within 60 feet of the point where the Scion dug its hands into the ground for its initial attack. Just like before, each creature in a 30-foot radius, 100-foot high cylinder make a dexterity save, but instead of taking 48 bludgeoning and 48 cold damage on a failure, they take nothing on a success. As a bonus action, this Scion can create earth-shaking movement as it moves up to its movement speed, sending shockwaves through the ground in a 60-foot radius circle centered in itself that causes all creatures in the area to drop concentration if they fail a DC 25 Constitution saving throw, which can give your spellcasters a bit of trouble. All in all, an extremely tough winter-themed encounter that would work for very high levels of play as an ultimate boss monster. But what makes this encounter take a higher spot on this list is its ties with Norse mythology, which can tie in very well with the winter-themed setting regardless. Unfortunately, being so high level, there might not be much of an opportunity to properly utilize this boss encounter, which is why it can't take a higher spot on this list. But if you manage to pull it off, it could make for one heck of a one-shot for the holidays. And at number 6, we have the Yeti and its older brother, the Abominable Yeti. both from the monster manual. Yetis are CR3 large monstrosities that tend to cause local problems in snowy biomes. They're adept at hunting and blending into the snowy white environment well enough to be barely noticed by potential prey until it's too late. And if enough of them get hungry enough, they might even attack humanoid settlements with little to no problems at all. But as fearsome as they aren't invincible. They possess an innate fear of fire, which imposes disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks until the end of the Yeti's next turn whenever it takes fire damage. Outside of that, however, it is important to watch out for its many attacks, as its multi-attack action consists of making 2 claw attacks and using its chilling gaze all in the same turn. The claws deal 1d6 plus 4 slashing damage plus 1d6 cold damage, while its chilling gaze forces creatures it can see within 30 feet to make a DC 13 Constitution saving throw, or take 3d6 cold damage and become paralyzed for 1 minute, unless the creature is immune to cold damage. A paralyzed creature can repeat its saving throw at the end of each of its turns to try and end the effect early, and if it does, or if the creature succeeded on its saving throw in the first place, it's immune to the chilling gaze of all Yetis except the Abominable variant for 1 hour. The Yeti also possesses the ability to hide in the snow better using its snow camouflage, granting it advantage on stealth checks made to hide in snowy terrains, as well as a keen sense of smell, granting advantage on perception checks that rely on smell, making the Yeti a tricky foe that can likely ambush the party when they least expect it. As for the Abominable Yeti, the only difference is it has a notably higher stats, and 1 extra ability, Cold Breath, which recharges on a 6 and deals 10d8 cold damage to creatures in a 30-foot cone that fail a DC 18 Constitution save, or half as much on a success. These creatures are much simpler in scope as a choice for this list compared to the other entries, but still work as a short and simple arc for your campaign, and is more likely to fit in as there aren't any special mechanics or quirks you have to work in. They're basically beasts that attack villages or hunt in the wild and are usually not a threat. So you can plot a simple storyline where something is either disturbing the Yeti, using them to attack a settlement, or just make a storyline where the Yeti are just ravenous beings that need to be put down before they destroy the Rhyme's Day, or whatever your holiday is that you make up for your campaign. Sometimes simple can be better when you might not have time to fully flesh out an overarching plot, which makes Yetis a perfect creature to have on this list. With a corncob pipe and a button nose at number 5 on this list, we have the Snow Golem from Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden. This adorable construct is a mass of snow brought to life through magic. It's a CR3 medium construct that doesn't really have much going for it. It has an okay number of hit points at 39, an AC that is pathetically low at 8, and a vulnerability to fire damage. While it could cause problems for your party if you don't have magical weapons due to its immunity to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, with a bit of cold and poison damage immunity to go along with it, the Snow Golem can be kind of hit or miss when it comes to a challenge. And if you aren't sure if a Snow Golem is immune to cold damage and try to hit it with a Frostbite or a Ray of Frost, you'll learn that it's not only immune to the damage, it completely absorbs the cold damage and regains hit points through its cold absorption feature. Its form also can't be altered in any way from a mutable form, nor does it require air, food, drink, or sleep. However, another weakness the Golem has is that whenever it finds itself in an area of extreme heat, the Golem begins to lose 1d6 hit points at the start of each of its turns. In terms of attacks, well, they're not that impressive. It can make 3 melee attacks with its multi-attack using Slam, which deals 1d6 plus 2 bludgeoning damage plus 2d6 cold damage, which isn't terrible, but it does have a tiny plus 4 to hit, kind of low for a CR3 creature. It also gets a snowball attack as a 60-foot range weapon attack, which deals 2d6 plus 2 cold damage, but doesn't have any bonus to hit, making it very unreliable as a range option for the Snow Golem. So what makes the Snow Golem take number 5 on this list? The Snow Golem works very well as a minion-based creature, and a thematic one at that. Say you have an evil sorcerer or witch that wants to ruin the winter holidays, so they create dozens of sentient snowmen to attack a small, happy village of people that just want to celebrate Rhyme's Day. Well, these creatures are very easy to defeat due to their low stats, so they'd be perfect for a relatively low stakes one-shot if you're just looking to have a bit of fun with your players. Alternatively, you could even make it so that your players might be able to build their own snow golems to defend a village from being attacked by a pack full of hungry Yetis before they consume the giant feast that was prepared for the town. The idea of evil sentient snowmen being controlled by one big bad evil guy sounds like a perfect fit for the holidays, so it takes a higher spot on this list compared to the other entries. And haunting the number 4 spot on this list is the Lowly Ghost from the Monster Manual. This is a CR4 undead that fits perfectly into the winter aesthetic, not because of its moveset, but because of the flavor potential it can have. Everyone knows about the story of the Ghost of Christmas Past, Present, and Future, so why not have similar ghost NPCs in your campaign to retell a similar story using the trope of having a party member that doesn't like the winter holidays, a short character arc where they may or may not start to realize how important the holidays are to a lot of people. And if that party member decides to not engage or even fight back, the ghost does have some decent abilities it can use against you, assuming you're low enough level for it to even be a problem in the first place. Withering Touch allows the ghost to deal 46 plus 3 necrotic damage, and it can enter the ethereal plane to make itself intangible. It can age creatures and frighten them with its horrifying visage, or even possess them for a time. All of these can be flavored in ways that fit the winter holiday story in various ways without it being debilitating as well. Perhaps the agent portion of horrifying visage is only an illusion that lasts temporarily, while showing the party member's future self, for instance. Ghosts are unusually great creatures to have when flavoring holiday stories, among other things, because they usually come with the wisdom and experience of their past lives that they can impart onto other creatures if the party ever finds a friendly ghost to help them out. It's this kind of flexibility that makes ghosts a perfect candidate for a higher spot on this list. And chilling out at number 3 on this list is the Bheur Hag from Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. This CR7 Hag has the ability to cast Control Weather once per day without using any material components, allowing it to change the weather to be a more winter-like state, or make an already tranquil winter wonderland into a deadly blizzard storm to ruin the holidays for you and your friends. This complements the Bheur Hag as well, as it comes with an Ice Walk ability, allowing it to move across and climb icy surfaces without needing an ability check, while difficult terrain made above ice or snow doesn't cost any extra movement for it. The Bheur Hag also has access to a Grey Staff, allowing it to use it as a flying broomstick that grants it a fly speed of 50 feet and the ability to hover, making it hard to knock on the ground. And if that wasn't enough, the Bheur Hag does come with a few ice-related abilities. With its multi-attack, the Hag can make 2 slam attacks or frost attacks and reduce the target speed by 10 feet until the start of the Hag's next turn. Horrific Feast allows the Hag to feed on the corpses of one enemy within reach that has died within the past minute, causing each creature within 60 feet of the Hag that can see it feeding to make a DC 15 wisdom save against being frightened for 1 minute. While frightened in this way, they're also incapacitated, can't understand what others say, can't read, and can only speak gibberish. Luckily, a creature may repeat their saving throw at the end of each of its turns to try and end the effect early. Whether you succeed on the initial saving throw or subsequent ones, you're immune to the effects of the Horrific Feast for the next 24 hours. Lastly, the Bheur Hag has access to a few spells while holding or riding the Grey Staff. At will, it can cast Hold Person as many times as it wants, meaning it can also cast Cone of Cold, Ice Storm, and Wall of Ice once per day. The Bheur Hag also works perfectly as a lower level big bad evil guy for a winter holiday session, as the Hag can make for some really great bits of storytelling given how they tend to function in D&D lore, by luring creatures to the lair or outright being a menace to society. The Bheur Hag is no exception, as they might use Control Weather to create ice storms to batter nearby settlements into discourse and disarray in the hopes that they turn on each other, to the Bheur Hag's own entertainment. And if you want a bit of a unique twist, you can even have the Bheur Hag create a small army of snow golems to do its bidding, fitting it with the winter aesthetic perfectly. What makes the Bheur Hag work so well and why it takes a high spot on this list is because its CR level is in the perfect range so that it's not too high level for most parties to even encounter in the first place, and not so low that it wouldn't be a proper challenge for lower level parties either, making it a perfect mini big bad evil guy for a winter themed story. Being a perfect imitation of the number 2 spot on this list is the Mimic from the Monster Manual. These CR2 shape-changing monstrosities are mostly known for imitating treasure chests to lure in greedy adventurers. However, they are considered shape changers and have the ability to polymorph into pretty much any object of any kind. Maybe the Mimics want to get into the holiday spirit and disguise itself as a present or a gift, which can provide a rude awakening for the party as they figure out where the Mimics came from and start an adventure based on that. Perhaps the same Bheur Hag that's been trying to sow despair in the settlement might also be behind such a vile attack on the city. And if you do manage to fight more of these Mimics, be careful with their adhesive, as it can attach itself to you and start grappling. You can escape this grapple by succeeding a successful DC 13 acrobatics or athletics check with disadvantage. While you're grappled by the Mimic, it also gains advantage on all attack rolls against you as well. As for its actions, it can use Pseudopod, dealing 1d8 plus 3 bludgeoning damage, and attach itself to you with its adhesive trait if it's in its object form. It also has a bite attack that deals 1d8 plus 3 piercing damage and an additional 1d8 acid damage. While being a CR2 creature with only 12 AC and 58 hit points doesn't seem that threatening, especially for a decently leveled party, Having a way to have consistent advantage on his attack rolls can lead to some devastating results, as nothing really stops it from sticking by you while it chomps away at your flash with advantage due to being grappled. At that point, no amount of AC is going to save you from taking more damage than necessary when fighting them. However, with their versatility as a surprise creature you can throw at your players due to their ability to shape change into any object you can think of, the Mimic is a perfect addition to your winter holiday session as a gift mimic, chair mimic, mistletoe mimic, etc, etc. The possibilities are just endless when it comes to terrorizing your players with a mimic that they'd be too suspicious of every object they come across. And what better way to top off the winter holiday spirit than with the Treant from the monster manual at the number 1 spot. Treants are CR9 plants that sort of act as mimics but for trees instead. When they're motionless, they are indistinguishable from a normal tree, but are big enough to be counted as siege monsters, allowing them to deal double damage to objects and structures. The Treant's multi-attack consists of 2 slam attacks that deal 3d6 plus 6 bludgeoning damage each, but it can also throw a rock as an action instead for 4d10 plus 6 bludgeoning damage if it needs to be used as a range option. Lastly, the Treant can animate up to 2 trees it can see within 60 feet of it once per day. These act as a lesser Treant due to having an intelligence and charisma score of 1, can't speak, and can only use slam as an attack option. These little guys remain animated for 1 day, or until they die, until the Treant dies, or is more than 120 feet away from the tree, or until the Treant takes a bonus action to turn the lesser Treants back into inanimate trees, taking root if possible. Treants aren't really bound to look like any specific kind of tree, so you can always flavor them to be any kind of tree you want. For example, since this is a winter-themed list, you can have a story where the Treant that looks like a pine tree started witnessing its pine brethren being cut down and placed in people's homes, prompting the Treant to come to life and wreak havoc on the nearby settlement as revenge. However, since the Treants can speak Common, Druidish, Elvic, and Sylvan, they can reasonably be negotiated with, and you can give the party a way to teach the Treant about the meaning of Rhymes Day, or whatever holiday or party you're celebrating. Perhaps you will come to the compromise and return the trees to the pine forest when the day is finished. Or, if you have a particularly nice Treant present, convince it to help protect the village from the recent Yeti and evil snowman attacks that have been happening as of late. Regardless, the Treant is the perfect centerpiece to add to any winter-themed campaign, due to the sheer amount of ways you can work them into your story, as both guardians or as enemies, and are strong enough to give both low-level parties and slightly higher-level parties a bit of a challenge. Alright, and that's the list. What other creatures do you think add to your campaigns that you'd consider winter-themed? Do you have a favorite homebrew creature based off of winter that you like showing off to your players whenever you get a chance? Or do you have ideas for future videos just like this one? If so, I'd love to put them all down in the comments below. Take care and happy holidays.